Ho, ho, ho. It is Merry Christmas at Hogwarts, and here I am reading another few pages from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So, the image behind me, this is me. I'm actually at Hogwarts for Christmas, but this scene was taken from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the movie. And I will admit, some of you might have seen the movies. I really do not enjoy the movies for a lot of reasons, but especially the early movies. The first and second Harry Potter movies, I think, are very poorly done, and they really don't capture a lot of the kind of the magic that's in Harry Potter. So here we have Harry Potter. Gets a very special Christmas gift for Christmas, and I want you to notice the picture of what Harry Potter is holding in his hand versus what's described in the book. And I think you'll kind of see what I mean with some of the issues I have with the movies, is they're just not quite as good. It's a really dumb looking robe too that I think he has in the movie here. But anyway, all right, let's get to it. Merry Christmas at Hogwarts. You what? Hagrid looked shocked. Listen here, I told you, drop it. It's nothing to do with what that dog's guarding. We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is, that's all, said Hermione. Unless you'd like to tell us and save us the trouble, Harry added. We must have been through hundreds of books already, and we can't find him anywhere. Just give us a hint. I know I've read his name somewhere. I'm saying nothing, said Hagrid flatly. Just have to find out for ourselves then, said Ron. And they left Hagrid looking disgruntled and hurried off to the library. They had indeed been searching books for Flamel's name ever since Hagrid had let it slip, because how else were they going to find out what Snape was trying to steal? The trouble was, it was very hard to know where to begin, not knowing what Flamel might have done to get himself into a book. It wasn't in great wizards of the 20th century or notable magical names of our time. He was missing, too, from important modern magical discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizardry. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library. Tens of thousands of books, thousands of shelves, hundreds of narrow rows. Hermione took out a list of subjects and titles she had decided to search, while Ron strode off down a row of books and started pulling them off the shelves at random. Harry wandered over to the restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if Flamel wasn't somewhere in there. Unfortunately, you need a specially signed note from one of the teachers to look in any of the restricted books, and he knew he'd never get one. These were the books containing powerful dark magic never taught at Hogwarts and only read by older students studying advanced defense against the dark arts. What are you looking for, boy? Nothing, said Harry. Madam Pince, the librarian, brandished a feather duster at him. You'd better get out then. Go on, out. Wishing he'd been a bit quicker at thinking up some story, Harry left the library. Ron, and Hermione had already agreed they'd better not ask Madam Pince where they could find Flamel. They were sure she'd be able to tell them, but they couldn't risk Snape hearing what they were up to. Harry waited outside in the corridor to see if the other two had found anything, but it wasn't very hopeful. They had been looking for a fortnight after all, but as they only had odd moments between lessons, it wasn't surprising they'd found nothing. What they really needed was a nice long search without Madam Pince breathing down their necks. 5 minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined them, shaking their heads. They went off to lunch. You will keep looking while I'm away, won't you? Said Hermione, and send me an owl if you find anything. And you could ask your parents if they know who Flamel is, said Ron. It'd be safe to ask them. Very safe, as they're both dentists, said Hermione. Once the holiday started, Ron and Harry were having too good a time to think much about Flamel. They had the dormitory to themselves, and the common room was far emptier than usual, so they were able to get the good armchairs by the fire. They sat by the hour, eating anything they could spear on a toasting fork, bread, crumpets, marshmallows, and plotting ways of getting Malfoy expelled, which were fun to talk about even if they wouldn't work. Ron also started teaching Harry wizard chess. This was exactly like Muggle chess, except that the figures were alive, which made it a lot like directing troops in battle. Ron's set was very old and battered. Like everything else he had owned, it once had belonged to someone else in his family. In this case, his grandfather. However, old chessmen weren't a drawback at all. Ron knew them so well, he never had trouble getting them to do what he wanted. Harry played with chessmen Seamus Finnegan had lent him, and they didn't trust him at all. He wasn't a very good player, yet they kept shouting different bits of advice at him, which was confusing. Don't send me there. Can't you see his knight? Send him. We can afford to lose him. On Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to next day for the food and the fun, but not expecting any presents at all. When he woke early the next morning, however, the first thing he saw was a small pile of packages at the foot of his bed. "Happy Christmas," said Ron sleepily as Harry scrambled out of his bed and pulled on his dressing gown. "You too," said Harry. "Will you look at this? I've got some presents." "What did you expect? Turnips?" said Ron, turning to his own pile, which was a lot bigger than Harry's. Harry picked up the top parcel. It was wrapped in thick brown paper, and scrawled across it was, "To Harry, from Hagrid." Inside was a roughly cut wooden flute. Hagrid had obviously whittled it himself. Harry blew it. It sounded a bit like an owl. A second, very small parcel contained a note. "We received your message and enclosed your Christmas present. From Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia." Sellotaped to the note was a 50-pence piece. "That's friendly," said Harry. Ron was fascinated by the 50 pence. "Weird," he said. "What a shape. Is this money?" "You can keep it," said Harry, laughing at how pleased Ron was. "Hagrid and my aunt and uncle. So who sent these?" "I think I know who that one's from," said Ron, going a bit pink and pointing to a very lumpy parcel. "My mum. I told you you didn't expect any presents, and oh no," he groaned, "she's made you a Weasley jumper." Harry had torn open the parcel to find a thick, hand-knitted sweater in emerald green and a large box of homemade fudge. "Every year she makes us a jumper," said Ron, unwrapping his own, "and mine's always maroon." "That's really nice of her," said Harry, trying the fudge, which was very tasty. His next present also contained sweets, a large box of chocolate frogs from Hermione. This left only one parcel. Harry picked it up and felt it. It was very light. He unwrapped it. Something fluid and silvery gray went slithering to the floor, where it lay in gleaming folds. Ron gasped. "I've heard of those," he said in a hushed voice, dropping the box of every flavor beans he'd gotten from Hermione. "If that's what I think it is, they're really rare and really valuable." "What is it?" Harry picked the shining silvery cloth off the floor. It was strange to touch, like water woven into material. "It's an invisibility cloak," said Ron, a look of awe on his face. "I'm sure it is." "Try it on." Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders, and Ron gave a yell. "It is! Look down!" Harry looked down at his feet, but they had gone. He dashed to the mirror. Sure enough, his reflection looked back at him. Just his head suspended in midair, his body completely invisible. He pulled the cloak over his head, and his reflection vanished completely. "There's a note," said Ron suddenly. "A note fell out of it." Harry pulled off the cloak and seized the letter. Written in narrow, loopy writing he had never seen before were the following words. "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you." There was no signature. Harry stared at the note. Ron was admiring the cloak. "I'd give anything for one of these," he said. "Anything. What's the matter?" "Nothing," said Harry. He felt very strange. Who had sent the cloak? Had it really once belonged to his father? Before he could say or think anything else, the dormitory door was flung open, and Fred and George Weasley bounded in. Harry stuffed the cloak quickly out of sight. He didn't feel like sharing it with anyone else. "Merry Christmas! Hey, look! Harry's got a Weasley jumper, too!" Fred and George were wearing big jumpers, one with a large F on it and the other with a large G. "Harry's is better than ours, though," said Fred, holding up Harry's jumper. "She obviously makes more of an effort if you're not family." "Why aren't you wearing yours, Ron?" George demanded. "Come on, get it. They're lovely and warm." "I hate maroon." Ron moaned half-heartedly as he pulled it over his head. "You haven't got a letter on yours," George observed. "I suppose she thinks you don't forget your name. But we're not stupid. We know we're called Gred and Forge." "What's all this noise?" Percy Weasley stuck his head through the door, looking disapprovingly. He had clearly come halfway through unwrapping his presents, as he, too, carried a large jumper over his arm, which Fred seized. "P for prefect! Get it on, Percy. Come on, we're all wearing ours. Even Harry got one." "I don't want," said Percy thickly as the twins folded the jumper over his head, knocking his glasses askew. "And you're not sitting with the prefects today either," said George. "Christmas is a time for family." The frog marched Percy from the room, his arms pinned to his sides by his jumper. All right, so real quick, I want to pause with a story, and I want to just So take a look at the picture. Like I said, did you notice how it was described when Harry opened it? It said something fluid and silvery gray went slithering to the floor where it lay in gleaming folds. And it says Harry picked the shining silvery cloth off the floor. It was strange to the touch, like water woven into material. So the robe that Harry here has in his hands on your screen is definitely not fluid, definitely not silvery gray, and it doesn't it's not this very thin, light material like water woven into cloth. It looks very thick and heavy and kind of funny looking. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, let's keep going. Harry had never in all his life had such a Christmas dinner. 100 fat roast turkeys, mountains of roast and boiled potatoes, platters of fat chipolatas, tureens of buttered peas, silver boats of thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce, and stacks of wizard crackers every few feet along the table. These fantastic crackers were nothing like the feeble muggle ones the Dursleys usually bought, with their little plastic toys and their flimsy paper hats. Harry pulled a wizard cracker with Fred, and it didn't just bang. It went off with a blast like a cannon and engulfed them in a cloud of blue smoke, while from the inside exploded a rear admiral's hat and several live white mice. Up on the high table, Dumbledore had swapped his pointed wizard's hat for a flowered bonnet and was chuckling merrily at a joke Professor Flitwick had just read him. Flaming Christmas puddings followed the turkey. Percy nearly broke his teeth on a silver sickle embedded in his slice. Harry watched Hagrid getting redder and redder in the face as he called for more wine, finally kissing Professor McGonagall on the cheek, who, to Harry's amazement, giggled and blushed, her top hat lopsided. When Harry finally left the table, he was laden down with a stack of things out of the crackers, including a pack of non-explodable luminous balloons, a grow your own warts kit, and his own new wizard chess set. The white mice had disappeared, and Harry had a nasty feeling they were going to end up as Miss Norris's Christmas dinner. Harry and the Weasleys spent a happy afternoon having a furious snowball fight in the grounds. Then, cold, wet, and gasping for breath, they returned to the fire in the Gryffindor common room, where Harry broke in his new chess set by losing spectacularly to Ron. He suspected he wouldn't have lost so badly if Percy hadn't tried to help him so much. After a tea of turkey sandwiches, crumpets, trifle, and Christmas cake, everyone was too full and sleepy to do much before bed except sit and watch Percy chase Fred and George all over Gryffindor Tower because they'd stolen his prefect badge. It had been Harry's best Christmas day ever, yet something had been nagging at the back of his mind all day. Not until he climbed into bed was he free to think about it. The invisibility cloak and whoever had sent it. Thanks for listening.